About a year ago, me and my then girlfriend at the time were walking out of a Steak and Shake at night. She was ahead of me by about 3 to 5 feet. I saw a giant bug flying halfway between us to the right, maybe about 8 feet off the ground. My brain couldn't comprehend what I was looking at, but I was instantly terrified because it was absolutely huge. It looked like a crane fly, but it was the size of a beach ball. Its body itself wasn't crazy big, but it had very, very long legs and wings. I think it only had 2 wings. I shouted at her that there was a giant bug, and she saw it too and screamed, and we ran back to the car. There were 2 people outside standing by their cars talking, and they asked why she had screamed, and she shouted that there was a giant bug. They quickly got into their cars and left. I tried to see if I could see anything from the car, but it was gone. We only saw it for maybe 5 to 10 seconds. I'm not sure if it was some kind of drone or what it was. I tried looking up all the native bugs to Michigan, but even non-native bugs don't ever seem to get that big, so it just doesn't make sense to me. I think it was kind of a pale straw yellow, but we were in a parking lot, and I think they had those more tannish orange parking lot lights. I don't distinctly remember the sound. I think it was fairly silent. It wasn't an optical illusion. It was definitely an abnormal size. It flew around a bit, and my girlfriend saw it too, and she described the same thing to me.
This story took place about 8 years ago. This happened in Lynchburg, Virginia. I was 19 at the time, and my friend Chuck was also 19. We grew up and went to school together. The only difference was, is straight out of high school, I still continued to work with my father at the mill, and my buddy joined the army. After he finished boot camp and went to his schooling, he came back for a couple of weeks to visit family, and that's when this happened. The both of us were practically best friends, and we did pretty much everything together before high school ended. We were both very outdoorsy. We both enjoyed hiking and camping and fishing together, and periodically hunting as well. We hung out a couple of times while he was back on leave. But it was the last time that we hung out. It was the weirdest thing ever. I know this might not be scary to everyone, but it really happened and it still spooks us when we talk about it. We both decided that we were going to go on a partial day hike over at the Blackwater Creek. It's kind of a spot that a lot of people go to. It's pretty beautiful. We agreed to get up early and get a nice little hike in early on, and then grab some sandwiches at the pub. I want to say the first hour, it was just normal. It was beautiful. It was a nice sunny day. Not a cloud in the sky with a nice breeze. We were kind of just making our own path, just following the side of the creek. We were just talking about anything and everything. Primarily, he was just telling me stories about what happened to him in boot camp. Told me about the run, 2 miles in under how many minutes? Jeez-o. That's crazy. There's no way I would have passed it. We joked about that and some of the things that also happened in his schooling and whatnot. And then he told me he had to take a dump. I know. TMI. But that's how it happened. Luckily, he had some baby wipes or some sort of wipes that was in his backpack. He always carried this backpack with him. Whether we were camping or hiking, he always had it with him. He had all kinds of fire starters, wipes, tissues, rope. I mean, he had knives, cooking supplies. Like, he had it all in there. It was pretty neat. Myself, I had a bottle of water. I figured, why would I need to carry that stuff when he already had it? That's how I thought, at least. So, he went off into the woods somewhere off behind us to handle his business. I continued walking a little bit more. And that's when I saw her. There was this woman far off ahead. She was kind of far, but I could still see her. She wasn't terribly that far off, but enough to where if you didn't look straight, you'd probably miss her. I started walking in her direction slowly, and she started walking in mine. The closer I got, the more I started to have regrets. I don't know why, but something felt weird. Once I got closer, I then realized why I had that feeling in my gut. When she was about 30 or so feet in front of my face, she just stood there. And that's when I was able to get a better visual of her. This woman wasn't wearing any clothes. She was completely naked. She had a slender build and probably around 5 feet tall with long black hair. She looked dirty, but as I waved and said hello, she just turned her head and tilted it at some kind of angle, expressionless. Was that blood on her face? Was she injured? I thought to myself. I asked her if she was okay, and that's when I noticed her eyes. Her eyes were pitch black. I got a small tingling down my body. I took a couple of steps back. I was shooken up. What the hell is going on? Why is this woman out here naked? Why is there blood on her and she has freaking black eyes? I turned around to yell for my friend Chuck. I knew he probably was finished with what he was doing, and I wanted him to see this. When I turned back around, the woman was gone. I want to say about 20 yards further out from where she had originally been standing was this grayish-white wolf. It turned its head, and then turned forward and darted off into the woods. I want to say a couple of minutes had passed, and Chuck finally caught up. I didn't move. I was frozen stiff. I didn't know what to think. I explained everything to my friend. He knew I wasn't lying. You could just tell by my expression I wasn't joking around. Neither he nor I knew exactly what had happened and what that was in the woods that day. Needless to say, he went on to his duty station, and we periodically just saw each other over the next few years, and eventually he moved back home. But even being back, neither one of us ever went hiking in those woods again.
I was 15. I'm 40 now, so this happened a long time ago. I'd been asleep. It was a school night. I woke up feeling like my mouth was sandpaper dry. I went to the bathroom for water, and when I came out, I was facing my bedroom's west window. We lived on 16 acres, and only the space around the house was kept mowed. Everything else grew wild. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. The first thing I saw were the reflective eyes. Red. Not brilliant, like a red light shining. More muted, like a reflection. Only, there wasn't anything on that side of the house. I went to the window to see what could be out there, and I saw it. Standing perfectly still, where the yard edge met the tall brush. Standing slightly sideways, so I could see the front arm hanging down. Staring directly at me. Staring into my eyes. It didn't look like a deer standing on its back legs. We always saw deer around our property. This wasn't it. This was something else. I remember the fear that went through me. Overwhelming and hard to breathe because it was watching me. This was pre-internet, so I'd never heard of things like skinwalkers, but I knew what demonic meant, and this thing was definitely that. I could see its breath because it was a cold night, so there were clouds of condensation as it would exhale. Other than breathing, it didn't move for a solid 5 minutes. I remember stepping off to the side of my window, hoping to still see it, but did not see me. It didn't move, and continued to stare at my window. After a bit, it turned and walked into the tall brush. It walked like a man, not like a deer standing on its back legs. I was shaking from fear, and remember going to sleep in my older brother's room. He, of course, was annoyed with me the next morning, and asked why I was in his room. I told him what I saw, and described it in detail. After getting ready for school, we went outside to that side of the house. We could see the path the creature took away from the house. Just some brush that was pushed down, as someone walked through grass that hadn't been touched in a long time, and parted it. There were no hoof prints or anything. The brush was too tall and thick to see that. The brush was about my head height, about 5 foot. This thing stood a good 2 feet taller than that, because I could see its chest and head as it walked away. I asked my brother if he remembered this night, and he said he remembers it vividly. I've never seen this creature since. I've seen other odd things, but never anything like this.
This happened a couple years back up in upstate Washington. Not Washington, D.C., the actual state of Washington above Oregon on the northwest. My family and I planned a 3-day getaway over at the Trails Inn RV of Spokane. We've been to a couple other different RV parks, but by far this one was our favorite. Sometimes, when we felt like getting down and dirty, we would throw up a tent in front of our RV just for the heck of it. We didn't throw up the tent during this time where this story is taking place, and I thank God we didn't. So after we had parked, hooked everything up, and started getting everything out on the picnic table, we all started prepping for lunch. You see, when you can afford an RV, camping just becomes better. There's more storage space. You could have more refrigerated items like beef. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We were about to feast. Now, it's a family tradition. We don't just do hamburgers. And people could say, okay, well, I use ground beef. I never use frozen hamburgers. Okay, you're halfway there. Now, get rid of that hamburger altogether and get yourself some tri-tip steaks. Marinate those bad boys, cook them up, and then cut those steaks into round hamburger patty sized. Then you're cooking. You could even go as far as grabbing a flat pan, marinating it with garlic salt all over some asparagus with butter, baked potato wrapped in foil, and just set it next to the fire. I'm telling you, there's a lot of tricks to the trade, but when we eat good. We always have our neighbors sniffing and wondering, hey, you got an extra hot plate? Usually we do. We bring plenty of food. Unfortunately for us, this last time that we went out camping at that RV location, I think we caught the attention of some uninvited guests. After we finished our lunch, we played some Skippo as a family on the picnic table, and then decided to go on a short hike. Fast forward a couple of hours. It was a nice hike, really. Nothing out of the ordinary. We came across a rattler, but outside of that, it was just a peaceful hike. Nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. Later that evening, when the sun was starting to set, I cooked up some marinated flat ribs on the grill, tossed a few brews, and we told some jokes, which turned into some scary stories around the fire pit. If memory serves me right, my wife was telling this unexpectedly good story about this haunted cabin in the woods. I don't recall everything about the story, but it involved some cryptid creature that kept breaking into the home whenever somebody rented it out for an Airbnb. Something like that. Sometime during her story, we all started hearing these weird noises of breaking branches or twigs. At first, it sounded like it was coming from somewhere behind the RV on the other side of it. We didn't think anything of it at the time, we just thought maybe it was our neighbors. I mean, we're not the only ones here at this RV park after all, but it was getting close to midnight and some of the people have already packed it in and went to bed. Then, a couple minutes later, we started hearing those same snapping noises coming from behind us. Then, to our right, whatever was making those noises was definitely circling us. But why? And who? My heart started beating really hard in my chest, and if that was happening to me, I could only imagine what my wife and kids were feeling. I whispered to everybody, "It's time to pack it in. Let's get inside the RV." Nobody hesitated. One after another, they all formed a line and went inside the RV, with me last and shutting the door behind me. I locked the door and sat on the little couch on the side and peeked out of the curtain window. Nothing. Nothing but burning fire. Shoot, I mumbled to myself. I forgot my beer. It's gonna get warm out there. My wife just gave me the worst look you could even imagine. "We have more beer here." And then she pointed to the mini fridge. "Oh yeah, never mind," I said. I closed the blinds and I just took a breath, trying to relax my heart rate. I swear, as soon as I exhaled my breath, something was trying to open our RV door from outside. Just when I thought my heart rate was gonna die down, I slowly moved the corner of the curtain and peeked outside towards the door of the RV. There was nothing there. What? Who the hell was trying to open our RV? I said out loud. My family just sat on the couch together, huddled, without ever responding to me. I glanced by the fire, and again, nothing but the fire pit and our lawn chairs. But when I looked further out towards the tree line, that's when I saw it. There was this large black furry wolf-like man standing huddled right next to some trees. Its eyes were amber bright, and it just stood there on its back legs, breathing heavily with its chest convulsing. It looked angry. It looked hungry. I just sat there, huddled at the window, frozen in shock for at least a 20 or 30-second stare down with this beast. I've never seen anything like it before. As soon as I broke the cycle, I screamed to everyone to get ready, we're leaving. Left everything outside, got in the driver's seat, started up the engine, and we left that RV park, never to return.
Last year, in coastal swampy Georgia, I was driving down a long rural wooded road, on my way to work just before dusk. I always went slow and careful because so many deer in this area. I saw movement to my left coming from the woods and slowed down a little. 10 feet in front of my car, 2 wolf-looking beings crossed the road in perfect unison and synchronicity. They looked like your stereotypical movie werewolf, upright on 2 legs, and stepped into the wooded swamp on the other side. I was at an almost dead stop with my brights on and saw this clear as anything. I couldn't even think straight enough to grab my camera, which was right next to me.
This isn't the scariest story, but it's right up your alley. This took place a few years back up in the Midwest in Michigan, Flint to be exact. My family and I were spending the day hiking over at the Stepping Stone Falls, right next to the C.S. Mott Lake. Now mind you, I was a kid when this had happened. I don't remember every single bit and piece and detail of every different situation, but I just remember what happened to me and what I witnessed as a child. Both my parents were avid hikers. They were definitely the outdoor types of people. My older brother was the total opposite. He was more of a city guy. He pretty much just zoned out whenever he was forced to go with us to go hiking. I loved it, but my brother, not really. As long as he had his tape player and headphones, he would pretty much just deal with it. If memory serves me right, I believe I was 10 years old and my older brother was 12, turning 13 that December. I just remember hanging out with my brother behind my parents as they walked a little bit faster than we did. My brother pretty much ignored me the entire trip with his headphones on, listening to MC Breed. I knew he wasn't old enough to be listening to that tape, and if our parents found out, they would ground him for a week. But I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to get beat down. That area was quite nice. There was this stone-like waterfall, this large wooden bridge, and plenty of trails to choose from, if I remember correctly. Again, I was a kid. Now I know what most of you are probably gonna think. Oh, you're a 10-year-old kid, your eyes deceive you, you have a large imagination, or you're just looking for attention because your parents aren't giving you much of it. Well, you're all wrong. Well, maybe not the last one. Even though I was the youngest, I was still kind of neglected. My parents worked a lot, and my older brother could give two craps about me. Of course, when we got older, we ended up being best friends, but when we were younger, we were kind of enemies. Fast forward a couple of hours. We had already walked quite a bit, stopped and had some lunch somewhere off at the trail on some grass, and we were making our way back towards the parking lot. I just remember complaining a lot because I had to go to the bathroom. I don't think my parents knew if there was porta potties there or any public restrooms that were anywhere nearby. Eventually, up ahead, is when we saw that wooden bridge. My dad told me to go ahead and run up ahead of them and go underneath that bridge and handle my business really quickly and try not to get caught. I didn't fight it. I had to go, so I ran up ahead towards that bridge. As I started getting closer to that bridge, mind you, I stopped in my tracks and just squinted my eyes and looked hard underneath the right corner of that bridge. Underneath that bridge. I swore I saw something. At first, I just rubbed my eyes in disbelief, but when I opened my eyes again, it was there. Something was under that bridge. I just stood there in fright, not really registering what I was seeing with my own two eyes. Tucked away underneath that bridge on the right-hand side was this curdled-up black furry beast-like of a dog, but its arms were long and its claws were longer and sharp-pointed fingers. Like human fingers, but full of fur. Its head was definitely wolf-like, but its body wasn't. It looked like it was trying to shadow itself under the bridge not to be seen. But I saw it. Clear as day. It was right there under that bridge. I screamed, ran back towards my family, and mumbled what I had seen to my father. He just laughed. So did my mom. My brother, still, again, with his headphones on. When my father walked up ahead holding my hand, that thing was gone. Whatever was under that bridge had completely disappeared.
I was driving home from my ex-girlfriend's place late one night, and I saw this sort of fuzzy, TV static looking silhouette, about 8 foot tall, crossing the road. It looked like a deer walking on its back legs, since it seemed to have antlers. It was moving slowly and had this really bouncy gait too. It turned to look at me, but kept moving. I slowed down to try and get a picture, but it was too dark to show up on camera, and I got kind of uncomfortable. I'm inclined to think it was really just a large buck on its back 2 legs, but it fit the bill for a small flap of Wendigo sightings that I'd seen other Redditors mention later. Same general time, last summer, location, Midwest, and description. I had heard of Wendigo before my sighting, but I didn't know what they looked like, so I never mentioned it much until I saw other people had similar experiences. Still though, it was probably just a deer, right?